Hi, welcome to your 14-day weather forecast. If you live in the south, I suspect many of you would be happy to wake up to scenes like these, at least just for a change. So can we expect that to happen in the next 2 weeks? Well, let's see. Now, this is a picture at 18 GMT on Tuesday, the 1st of July, a new month. I often think of July as being high summer. But in the short term, at least, a change is on the way. The hot conditions have been shunted away eastwards as cooler and fresher air returns from the Atlantic. There's some rain there in central and eastern counties for a time. Then high pressure actually builds back from the southwest, so it becomes mostly dry. In the southern half of the UK, rain more likely in the north. But through the weekend, those unsettled conditions are extending southwards, at least according to this computer model. So if it's correct, even southern and central counties could see significant amounts of rain. Much uncertainty, though, about whether that will happen, and I'll look at it a little bit later in more detail. But just continuing this forwards, we see that cooler air pushing southwards, but then towards the end of the week, it's high pressure which is building back from the Azores, and settled conditions are returning at least to the south, and Atlantic flow persisting in the north. Lots taking place. Now, this is the jet stream and upper air temperature sequence, the UK inside the red circle. You can see the jet stream track is indicated by the mottled shaded area. It's indicating that the very warm air, the oranges and reds, is being pushed away eastwards. And as I run the sequence, we see the greens return for a time, the cooler air, areas of low pressure move eastwards. But then towards the end, as the high pressure builds, the yellows and oranges are starting to head northwards, so warming up at least potentially towards the end of the first week. Let's see some of the day-to-day details. Wednesday afternoon, mid-20s in southern and central counties. It's cooler in the north, and there is some rain initially, which is clearing from the east. You can see that on the right, and some showery conditions pushing into the west, into the northwest. I think most of the showers will be in the northwest, with lots of sunny spells there in much of the UK once those patchy outbreaks of rain have moved away eastwards. So cooler, and that continues to be the case on Thursday, but it's still quite warm for the time of year, up to about 25 there in the south. Dry with sunny spells, variable amounts of cloud. Cooler as you head northwards, northwestwards, and that's where most of the showers are at this point. By Friday, temperatures have actually climbed a little bit further once more. 28 possible there in the London area, 27, 26 in much of central and eastern England. So those values are above the average, significantly above it. It's just in comparison to what we've had recently, it will still feel somewhat cooler, at least. In the north, it is cooler, much cooler, 15 degrees there in Northern Ireland, about 12 to 15 in Scotland, and also more cloud and outbreaks of rain pushing into much of the north as the day progresses. There could well be some heavy bursts of rain there, especially in the northwest. As we go into the weekend, temperatures still not bad, actually, in the central and eastern England, mid-20s, cooler once more in the northwest, but the details here do become rather uncertain. This is indicating a possibility at least of some heavy outbreaks of rain later in the day, pushing in across southern and central counties. Some rain there earlier on as well in the north, also some bright spells in the middle. But I wouldn't place too much stock in this rainfall sequence at this range. It will change a lot as the time approaches, the details will firm up. And as I've been saying, whether or not the south sees a lot of rain remains very much open to question. Sunday and Monday, using the GFS data generated charts, this also suggests showers or even longer spells of rain, possibly on Sunday in England and Wales. Temperatures close to the average, rather cool there in Scotland. And then on Monday, mainly dry across the UK as the high pressure starts to build and temperatures staying close to the seasonal norm. So of course at this time of year into July, that means pleasantly warm in southern and central regions at least. The Mogreps G temperature forecast for London shows things up very nicely. We're going forwards through the first week here, and at the beginning of the period it's very hot, temperatures pushing up above 30 Celsius. They could reach 35 degrees somewhere in the southeast this afternoon, so I may be filming this video on the hottest day of the year, but it's a steep drop in the first couple of days. You can see down to the low to mid 20s, something of an upwards trend there through Thursday and Friday. As I mentioned already, temperatures picking up by Friday, at least in the south. But then a big spread develops. You can see the individual lines are starting to diverge. Each one of those represents a forecast from one of the runs in the model. So what happens towards the end of the first week, I think, is subject to debate at this stage in terms of temperatures at least. Rainfall, according to the Mogreps G ensemble plot for London, well, this is the transition to cooler conditions at the start of the forecast period, so there could well be some rain around. The amounts probably not that great in the south through Wednesday, but they will be varying, I think, significantly over short distances, but not that great on the whole. Some places may get lucky. Then it's dry again as the high pressure builds. And then towards the end of the first week, the chance of rain increases. That's through the weekend period, maybe just a little bit beyond it. But as I say, keep an eye on the short range forecasts as that time period approaches. In more general terms, these are the 5-day rain accumulation forecasts from the ECM and GFS models. ECM on the left, very, very small amounts of rain in southern, central and eastern counties of England. GFS showing a little bit more, but still in the far southeast, so Kent and Essex, single digits, only 1, 2 or 3 millimetres there. More though, according to the GFS, in central counties of England. But the wettest part of the UK, definitely Western Scotland, according to both of these. Moving forwards to the 10-day period, and it stays wettest in the northwest, but there is a significant difference between the ECM on the left and the GFS on the right. That's in southern counties. The ECM is showing quite a lot more rain than the GFS through the 5 to 10-day part of the forecast period. You can see the totals in Kent and Essex and the London area really haven't increased significantly at all from the 5-day chart according to the GFS model, but on the ECM they have ticked up substantially. 30 to 40 millimetres of rain is being forecast there in much of central and eastern England. So it highlights the uncertainty. I know it's been exceptionally dry in the south through recent months, and many people would welcome the amounts of rain which the ECM model is showing, but it is very much a case of looking at the ensemble data, which I will do a little bit later, and keeping up to date with the short range forecasts, because it's much too early to be confident about the rainfall trends for the south at least. In more general terms, how are the deterministic models stacking up with each other as we head towards the end of the first week? This is the GFS, which the sequences were based on. Tuesday the 8th of July, the high pressure building back from the Azores, so it's turning more settled once more. The Canadian model, high pressure also building from the Azores, but this area of low pressure to the north, maybe digging in a little bit deeper and having more influence, so a greater chance of showers or longer spells of rain, at least in the north. The German model, low pressure pulling away eastwards, cool air moving southwards, but it's suggesting that high pressure would be toppling back in from the west in the following days. The ECM model also has much cooler air moving down from the north with low pressure pulling away eastwards, so the potential for showery conditions and lower temperatures. But once more, this also would indicate that high pressure could well be starting to build back in the days which were to follow. The artificial intelligence version of the same model, similar. And finally, the UK Met Office Global. The plunge of cooler air isn't so marked on this, and it's a ridge of high pressure air which is building in from the Atlantic. So taking them all together, the suggestion is that it could be somewhat cooler towards the end of the first week. Uncertainty about rainfall amounts, but showers at least would be very possible, especially in the north and the east as that area of low pressure moved away. But with all that said, there is a signal showing for high pressure to be starting to build once more from the west or the southwest. So rainfall amounts probably not great. Temperatures closer to the average than they have been, at least recently. How do things shape up as we head through the second week? Well, of course, as I always say, at this range, it is purely about the trends and the probabilities of different outcomes happening. Here's the 16-day GEFS ensemble plot for London. Across the top, forecast temperatures at about 1,500 metres above sea level. The trend, once more, is very clear. It is for them to be above the average, and there are a number of runs in here which are showing very, very warm air returning. You can see a number going above the 15 Celsius line here, and one or two at the very end climbing above the 20 mark. And to a certain extent, I think the number of hot runs in here is responsible for pulling up the average, which is the thick purple line. If that minority of hot runs didn't appear, then the clustering would pull this down further, and we'd probably be just a little bit above the 30-year norm. So I think the biggest cluster is much closer to the thick black line, the 30-year norm, than perhaps that purple line is indicating. In terms of rain, mostly dry. There are a few spikes along the bottom, but not very many. Now let's have a look at the European data, because here the positive anomaly isn't so marked as it was on the GEFS. But the caveat is that the data is 12 hours old, because that was what was available to me at the time of recording this. So fewer very hot runs in the mix, and it's worth pointing out that the ECM ensemble has 50 individual runs rather than the GEFS, which has 30 plus the control. So when you've got 50, you've got more opportunities obviously to get into this very high bracket, and it isn't doing so. But the caveat therefore is the data is a little bit older, so it may be that the GEFS is picking up on a more positive trend for hotter conditions to return. So with that said, let's have a look at the GEFS temperature forecast for the ground level, the ones which we actually experience using the data tables. And they are pretty warm or hot for the London area. By the middle part of the second week, the columns are mostly red or pink. The red is 26 to 30 degrees, the pink is over 30. So a significant number of runs once more are going above a 30-degree threshold as we go through the second week, and they will be associated with the very high temperatures aloft, which I showed on the GEFS graph. And although they are in a minority, they are not an insignificant one, up to about 30% there through the middle part of the week. The nighttime lows trending upwards as well. Lots of the oranges appearing here, 16s to 20s, and later on a few of the runs are going into the 21 to 25 degree category. So possibly becoming very warm or hot and uncomfortably humid through the nights. Manchester, above average. The anomaly isn't as big as it was on the London chart, and later on the risk of rain is possibly increasing, although it suggests there would be quite a lot of dry weather around even in the northwest of England. The 2-metre temperatures for Manchester trending upwards to a degree through the first few days. The pink shading there, the orangey shading, is going from the 21 to 25. Red starts to increase as well, the 26 to 30s, even a little bit of the over 30s towards the end. So similar trends to London at lower levels though, and the nights cooler, 11 to 15. Finally up to Glasgow, and I've used green here because the runs are generally closer to the average than they were on the Manchester and London plots. You can see the thick purple line, the ensemble mean, is staying close to the thick black line. In large part that could well be due to the lack of runs, which are bringing in very warm air. You can see nothing's going above 15 Celsius, which is typical because we're much further north here. It would be less likely to happen. Also, a greater risk of rain, and that's continuing through the second week. It's ongoing, more of an Atlantic influence persisting. That's what this appears to be suggesting. The 2-metre temperatures for Glasgow through the days, the oranges 16s to 20s dominating through the nights, the yellows and light greens 6 to 10, so distinctly cool in the northwest, good for sleeping. I should think quite a few people from London and the southeast will actually be jealous seeing those values. Rainfall through the second week. These are the ECM probability charts. They show the chance of 5 millimetres or more of rain falling on a given day. So the first 3 days here, probably wettest in the west, the northwest. There's a signal for it to be quite dry actually in central and eastern counties of England, particularly by day 3. And that general trend continues through the following 3 days. Lots of dry weather would be favoured here in southern and central counties of Britain if these are correct. You can see the percentage chance of significant rain is only between about 0 and 20 in much of England. In Western Scotland it's a different story though, around 40 to 60% as that Atlantic influence persists. The mean surface level pressure data table for York, dominated here as we go through the second week by yellow shade in those runs going for between 1011 to 1025 millibars, so mostly a little bit above the norm. Some orange starts to appear, 1026 to 1040, so strongly dominated by high pressure. But there is an ongoing chance of low pressure as well, according to this. It's a minority of runs which are going into the green bucket, but they are there, so probably not completely settled. It doesn't suggest, at least at this stage, that we're going to have a big area of high pressure centred slap bang over central parts of the UK. My guess would be that we'll see high pressure ridging up from the Azores at times, so having more influence in the south, maybe toppling into continental Europe, and that's what would allow the very warm air to push northwards. Again, the heat dome in Europe, never far away from the United Kingdom. The mean surface level pressure snapshot chart for Friday, the 11th of July, reinforces a message. You can see the high pressure building up from the Azores. This is from the GEFS. The ECM has a similar story to tell at the same time. So through the second week, probably driest and warmest in southern and central regions with the potential for hot spells, more of an Atlantic flow persisting in the north. But let's try and summarise it all. Week 1, at the start of the period, rain clears eastwards, leaving fresher and cooler conditions. It then turns dry and temperatures actually pick up in the south, so it becomes warm again. In the north it stays more mixed. And through the weekend, the unsettled conditions could extend southwards, at least for a time, but amounts of rain in southern and central regions are very much open to question. Week 2, changeable to begin with, mostly in the north. Drier and more settled periods develop from the south. Temperatures often above the average, and there is that significant chance of further hot spells. So, there we have it. The hot weather quickly breaks at the start of the forecast period, but it could return through the second week. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it useful. As ever then, if you did, please consider hitting the like button below and subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, because in that way you'll not miss any of my future updates. Also, don't forget to stay up to date with the day-to-day developments by checking out the TheWeatherOutlook.com website. Thanks very much now. Bye.